Hey Charlie, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
So, last week we did that aptitude survey. I've got the results back from that. But first, I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit. How was last week, and how is your relationship with Michael progressing, and how have you and Nancy been doing? I know you guys had a bit of a tiff last week that you were talking about. So, how are things at home right now?
Nancy and I are okay. I think we find it best just to kind of go our separate ways. So, like in our two-story house, she goes to one level, I'll go to the bottom, or I'll do work outside, and we just find that keeping distance usually works best until she cools off, because I'm usually pretty cool anyway, but she kind of goes into these tirades and she just nags about everything. So I'm not sure if last week's fight is actually even over, because she says it's fine, and I don't know what that word means anymore. So, but me and Michael are okay. We kind of hung out. We went and got some hot chocolate, and so I think that's okay. We're still building on our relationship, and he got mad about something that happened in school, and I tried to coach him with some things that I had to deal with when I was growing up. But I think he just thinks I'm this old fart, and he just doesn't really expect or respect that aspect. But I think every week that I learn something here has helped me.
Okay, that's good to hear. And I've noticed that sometimes, children will give you that impression where they think you're the old fart, but they might actually think about what you're saying later on, but not give you the impression that they are paying attention or anything like that. It's kind of I hate to say kid thing to do, but it does happen. But he's probably listening. He's just not letting on that he is listening to you. Now, so you said you and Nancy kind of just go your separate ways. Do you ever talk about, after a little bit, once things have kind of cooled down, what the argument was about, or, say, hey, I'm sorry, if one of you says, hey, I'm sorry I did this, or anything like that? Any communication about it at all?
No, I don't. I think that if one of us feels guilty, somebody will just start the conversation up about something else, and it's kind of left off to the wayside. I don't think that there's ever really any information that's brought back to that. We kind of forgive and forget it and just move on. So there's really nothing. I think it probably depends, but on this one, no, she was definitely in the wrong, and she's not going to admit it, and so I just forget about it.
Okay, and is that what you want to continue to do? Just forget about it?
No, it's just the safest way to resist the situation and frustration. So that's just the way I handle it.
That's the way you handle it. Have you ever thought about sitting down with her and trying to talk to her about, hey, this, this situation really bothered me. Can we talk about it a little bit?
We've tried that, and I have done it, like at the dinner table when we're sitting there, and I just try to say, how was your day? And I try to make small talk, and I get these weird looks, like she doesn't want to talk about anything, or she had something that happened, or she was mad about me for not doing something. And so I just stay quiet, because that's the easiest thing for me to do.
Does that bother you?
No, I actually use it in my stand-up, so it's okay.
Okay. So you're getting a lot of material from home for your stand-up comedy?
Yeah.
Okay. And how's
And
the
I know that
stand-up going?
embarrasses her.
I'm sure it does, because you're talking about the family, and in her eyes things aren't perfect, and things are not always great at home, and for you to use it as material, it probably makes her very uncomfortable. Has she told you she doesn't like it, but has she told you why she doesn't like you doing the comedy?
I don't know. I told her I use a different name, so that people that we come across, or our friends or people I see on the street, they don't know it's my family. So I use a different stage name so that people don't know I'm talking about her or my family. So maybe that gets her mad. I'm not really sure. But every time I walk in the house, it could be something different, so I never know.
So you think that you using a different name is making her angry?
I've been doing it for years. She's never said anything.
Okay. Just trying to clarify, because it sounded like that's what you had said. Okay. Well, we definitely should think of some ways to broach that subject with her, if it's because if it's coming in between you guys in your relationship, it probably should be discussed. But we should find a way for you to talk to her about it without setting off a fight, because we don't want that. But we do, I think it would be good for you to tell her exactly how you feel about things, and to also get her input, so that you guys can have a clear and honest conversation about, you know, what her feelings are about the stand-up comedy, what your feelings are about it, what you enjoy about it, what she doesn't enjoy about it, and is there anything that can be done so that she's not so upset over it and that you can still enjoy it. Does that sound like an idea?
It does. I mean, I love her. I love her just like I did my mother, you know, and she passed away, and Nancy's always been there for me, and she's kind of like the rock in our house. So, you know, I certainly don't like it when she's upset.
Mm-hmm.
I just never find that there's a good way to approach it with her, so it's just best to give her distance until she cools down.
Okay, so why don't you this next week think about some ways that you can approach her about this particular issue, and then we'll discuss them, and then the week after that you can try and broach it with her. How does that sound?
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about that aptitude testing that we did. Like I said, I got the results back. So a couple things that I really noticed on the results. You're very charismatic, you like people, you're fairly outgoing, which is fantastic. There's a lot of jobs you can do that require that kind of personality. So you said you were a salesman before. How'd you enjoy doing that?
I liked it. I like going into a different situation each different time.
Mm-hmm.
It allowed me to daydream a lot from time to time, which is what I like to do. I like to daydream to what it was like when I was a kid growing up, and I think sometimes I would get caught doing that from my boss. I'd always hand in good numbers, but for some reason my boss didn't like when I daydreamed or thought about different things that didn't entail the job, and so it affected my sales, and he just said I couldn't be here anymore. But I'm a people person, you know, and I love talking to people, so you would think I'd make a good salesman.
Okay, why do you think your boss was so upset over your daydreaming?
I don't know. Probably because he wasn't in my dreams.
Okay, that might be it. But why don't you, for a second, imagine you're your boss and you had an employee who was a pretty good salesman, but he would daydream a lot, thereby losing potential customers or losing the chance to perhaps upsell and get the customer to buy a slightly better product. How would you feel if you were the boss and you had an employee consistently doing that?
I guess I would be a little upset that I was paying somebody commission and they weren't giving me their 100%.
Okay, so can you see why he got now, you being the employee now, back to you being the employee, do you see how that could affect your relationship with your boss and how it could affect your job?
Yeah, I guess.
So, but again, you made a really good salesman. You said you were doing pretty good and you got decent commissions. So if you were to get another salesman job, what could you do to kind of keep yourself from daydreaming so much on the job? This way, you have a good relationship with your boss, and you make the sales, and you can bring home bring home more money home, which I know is something that concerns you. Do you think you could do something to kind of stop the daydreaming?
I don't know. Do you have any ideas or suggestions? Because I just kind of, like, I look up and I just think about something that happened yesterday or last week, or what it was like with, you know, my sisters, my mom and my dad, or a vacation we went on. I just can't escape that.
Okay. I know I quite often have a list of things I need to do. So, you know, so what works for some people is to have a checklist of, just a mental one even. Did I talk to the customer about this? Did I do this? Did I do that? Just kind of making sure that you're going through all the steps that you need to, that you've looked at every possible option or viable, you know, thing you could even sell or talk about with the customer, without going overboard, of course, you know, because you don't want to talk the customer out of the store, but and just, you know, maybe have a friend at work, you know, if you make friends with one of the other employees, if they see you kind of drifting off, having them give you a nudge or something. That's not the best solution, but it's a really good way to start.
Okay. Well, I'm willing to try.
Okay.
Because I really want a full-time job. I want benefits, and I want to be able to provide for my family. I want to be able to have insurance for them. You know, my kids are getting older and they need that. So I get worried that something medically is going to happen and we're not going to be prepared.
Okay. And does that keep you up at night?
Yes.
Okay. Does Nancy know this?
Probably. I don't know.
You don't know?
Sometimes we don't sleep together, so I don't know what she knows.
Have you thought about talking to her about all this?
No.
Okay. Well, that might be a conversation for another time as well. But the other thing is you have been looking for jobs, yes? Okay, did you find any, or have you been on any interviews?
I go on a lot of first interviews, but I've never seen to go back for the second.
Okay, and how do you think those interviews go, the first ones?
I think they go great. You know, I go in, I say hello, I try to sell myself, I smile, I tell them what they want to hear, and then I never get a phone call back.
Okay. You tell them what they want to hear?
I think that's what they want to hear.
You think that's good? Okay. That's good. Do you ever ask any questions about the company, what your duties will be, anything to get so that it seems like you're interested in the company, not just interested in just getting a paycheck?
No, maybe that's something I should do.
That might be a really good idea. I found it works pretty well. So a couple things you can ask about. Does the company have any sort of profit sharing? What are the benefits like? What are the company's beliefs? Some companies have very strong team belief where everybody is a member of the team and we work together to make the place great. So things like that. You could also research a little bit online about the company so you have some background information, and go in there when they're asking you if you have any questions. You can say, well, yes, I read this online about the company and it was really interesting to me. Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Okay. Okay, I can do that for next week.
Okay, and if you like, we can do a couple quick practice interview questions as well.
Okay.
And see how that goes for you. Okay, and so again, we're wrapping it up. We're getting to the end of our session. You're going to think about how you're going to approach Nancy, right? About how you feel about how she feels about your stand-up comedy and how you feel about it, and have that open, honest conversation about your material, correct? Okay. And do you think that's a reasonable goal for the next week?
I think so.
Okay. You ready to do it?
I am.
All right. Well, I will see you next week, and it was a pleasure as always.
Thank you very much.